Kids and Money. I kind of like that title. It makes me think of what kids are like when they get a little money that's a surprise. You ever notice the expression on their face when they get a check or some cash? Even at an early age, they know that there's something good about the dollar signs, and it's going to lead to some fun of some sort. So I'm going to start off by talking about adults today and then reflect that back to kids. As adults, we have this sort of financial life that we live in, and it's a complicated mess, isn't it? It consists of our lease on our apartment or our mortgage on our home. Maybe we have a car payment. Maybe we have two car payments. We might have a lease. We have our utility bills. We have credit cards. Maybe we have a student loan that's still out there. And at work, we have all these investments that we're supposed to make for retirement. Are we saving enough for the kids to go to college? It goes on. And we get to the point where we don't even think about it, but it's a pretty complicated money life that we all deal with as adults. And kids don't have to worry about that, obviously. But there's one point in all of our lives when this stuff just comes crashing down on our heads in a very short period of time. And it's kind of sink or swim. And when is that? That's when we get out of school, we get out of university, we leave the home for the first time. All of a sudden we have a lease on an apartment. We need a car to get to work. We might have a car payment. We might buy a car, that sort of thing. At work we have a 401k, and they say, what funds do you want to invest in to grow your money? We have a student loan. And it's just something that hits us like a whirlwind. And it's kind of exciting, but it's also pretty intimidating too. And it doesn't have to be that way. If we bring kids into our financial life just a little bit, doesn't take much time, when they're young, when they get to this point in their life and they have to do this stuff for themselves, it'll make a lot more sense and it'll be a lot less stressful. So how do we do that? So the first thing that I recommend is that when your child is at a pretty young age, 6 or 7 years old, you go to a bank and actually have them open a savings account. Now, I say go to a bank. Obviously, we can do this online, internet banking, that sort of thing. But I recommend doing it actually at an old-fashioned brick-and-mortar bank. It's going to be a great experience. You're going to go in there. You're going to tell whoever you meet in there that your child wants to open a savings account. You're going to be ushered into an office with the assistant manager. They're going to be very congratulatory towards your child. Some official papers are going to come out and be signed by your child, as well as you. It's just kind of a confidence-building experience, and your child's going to walk out of that just feeling a little bit bigger and a little bit more grown up than they did when they went in. And it doesn't take long, 45 minutes maybe, something like that. And then your child actually has a bank account, something official. Now, you might say, well, at that early age, my child doesn't have any income. Why would they need a banking account? Bank account. Well, most kids do have an income at an early age because they get money for birthdays and sometimes for holidays. They might earn a little bit of money around the house or even around the neighborhood at a young age. So they frequently do have some income. And that brings up the question, when they do get income, how much of it should they put into their savings account? And how much of it should they keep and just spend? I like to recommend that a significant amount of income actually goes into savings. So, for example, they get a relatively large check for their birthday, $50, for example, from a grandparent, something like that. I would recommend that about 80% of that actually goes into a savings account. And that makes a very powerful point to your child. It lets them know that savings is important, number one, and it also confronts them with this issue that we all deal with, and that is savings is difficult. We want to spend the money. We don't really want to put it in the bank. But one thing I always said to my kids was, even though you put the money in the bank, it's still your money. It means that it's in the bank. It's just not, home in the drawer in your bedroom. It's your money, and you can get it at any time. And that seemed to make it go a lot better. Now, as time goes on and they add more to this account from money that's coming in, or maybe even a little bit that they earn, they will see from the statements that come in the mail that their account balance gets larger. And that's a good thing. So that shows them, hey, save money, and then you've got money that you can do something special with. You actually have money, okay? So if you want to buy a drone or a new bike or a pony or something, probably not a pony, but something like that, you've got the money in there. You've got, actually maybe a pony, but you've got $550 in there, and you can use part of that for buying something special for yourself. So that's a great lesson as well. Number one, set up a savings account for your child when they're 6 or 7 years old, something like that, young. The next thing you can do, and again, very easy, just kind of share with them as they get older certain aspects of financial life. So, for example, you get a statement in for your mortgage. Explain to them what that is. Or a car payment. Or credit cards. Explain to them what credit cards are. That's a good thing to start, isn't it? You can explain to them the pitfalls and the temptations. Pretty interesting topic. You may find that your child is more interested in this topic than you would expect, and they'll have questions for you. Children do understand from an early age that money is important and there is something significant about it and valuable. So they may have good questions for you. The third thing that I recommend is to teach them a little bit about investments. Again, at an early age and in a very age-appropriate way, because investments can be extremely complex. But it's pretty easy to keep it simple. I was very fortunate when I was 12 years old. I had a grandfather, didn't have a lot of money, actually had some interesting eccentricities like some grandfathers. And on his dining room table, he had the biggest piece of graph paper that I had ever seen. And down the left-hand side, there were names, and I read them, and I could tell that some of them were names of companies, because I could recognize some of those well-known names. And next to those names were squiggly lines, drawn in pencil, and dates along the top. I asked him what this was, and he said, this is a stock chart. Now, this was way before the internet, so he made his own stock graph of the stocks that he owned, day by day, just by getting the figures out of the newspaper each day. Very painstaking effort. But I was really intrigued by it because one of those names was Coca-Cola, and I couldn't figure out why a company that made Coke would have a squiggly line next to it. It just didn't make any sense to me. But when he explained it, it started making a lot of sense. He told me that if you buy stock, you own a tiny little bit of a company. And if the company does well, the stock price may go up. So what you spent originally is now worth more. So, well, I asked him, you mean I could buy some stock, and if the company does well, then what I bought is worth more later, and I don't have to do anything else? I'd make money without doing anything? And he said, yes. I thought that was a pretty interesting concept to my young mind. And I didn't go out and buy any stock when I was 12 years old, but it kind of banged around in my head and, was something that, as many of us, when we get, older, we have to start thinking about investments for, other reasons to grow our money. So to sum up, we've got three things. Open a bank account when they're young. Simply communicate with them on an occasional basis about basic elements of your financial life. And third, talk to them a little bit about what stocks are, what investments are, why they're important. And that will help provide a foundation so that when they get to a point in their life where all this stuff is coming down on them very, very suddenly, it makes a lot more sense. I hope you found this conversation on kids and money to be useful with your family.